Vladimir Putin has delivered a stark warning to Donald Trump. A warning not just about Iran, but about history. You're walking into a trap, Putin told him. A trap that was laid long before any of the current players were born. A trap designed by globalist architects who followed the same playbook for over a century. The blueprint? It traces back to General Albert Pike, the man who sketched out the master plan for 3 world wars. The first 2 unfolded with eerie precision, and now the third is taking shape right in front of us. Putin sees it, he knows the script, and he's warning Trump, this war isn't yours, it isn't America's, it's theirs. The global elite want this war to collapse the old world and bring in the new. A war between civilizations designed to create chaos so vast that only a single global solution will seem acceptable. Trump thinks he's in control, that the strikes are calculated, limited, tactical. But Putin is trying to pull him back from the edge. He's telling him, you're not the author of this war, you're the instrument. You're stepping into a ritual that was planned generations ago. And then came the warning that echoed through every corridor of power. If the United States takes this path, Putin said, they will open the gates of hell. Let's get one thing straight. The mainstream media, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, BBC, they're not giving you the truth. They are pumping out pure, unadulterated bullshit. And why? Because the CIA, the same agency that has toppled governments, run black ops, and manipulated public opinion for decades, has had its claws deep in Hollywood and the press for generations. They've been preparing Americans and their globalist partners for this war narrative for years, conditioning the public, selling fear and selling lies. So, if you're still expecting any honest reporting now, in the days after bombs start falling, forget it. It's not coming. But listen to Putin, and listen closely. He made it clear. Iran wasn't developing a nuclear bomb, and even if they were, no nation on earth is insane enough to actually use one offensively. Why? Because they'd be wiped off the map in minutes. Nuclear weapons are not deterrents, not tools of aggression. And what Iran does have legally is a nuclear energy program. That's not a crime, that's sovereignty. And Putin has been saying it all along. So then ask yourself, why now? Why the strikes? Because Iran didn't build a nuke, they built a train. A rail line stretching across the region, connecting Iranian oil directly to Russia, India, and the entire BRICS bloc. No US Navy, no oil tankers, no globalist central banks, no SWIFT, no IMF, no World Bank, no permission slip to exist. A direct energy corridor outside the reach of the central banking system and petrodollar. And that's right there, that's the real red line for the globalists. While the West boasted about a maximum pressure campaign, claiming they'd isolate Iran and Russia, crush their oil exports and wreck their economies, something else was happening. Iran and Russia were connecting, not collapsing. A new rail corridor was coming online, linking Iranian ports to Russia, India, and the BRICS bloc. No petrodollar, no US Navy, no Western control. It made sanctions irrelevant. And that's exactly what the globalists didn't want the public to see. That the taxpayer dollars to Ukraine, the massive inflation, the economic pain achieved nothing. Meanwhile, Iranian media called it what it was, a shift in the global order. Everyone who tries to trade oil outside of the dollar eventually gets freedom dropped on them from 30,000 feet. That's the globalist pattern. And this time, Israel, the elite's hatchet man, gave the nod. As Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson revealed this week, he watched Mossad take over the Pentagon in 2002, and the world has not been the same place since.
And it's unquestionable that the Epstein business was heavily influenced, let me put it that way, by Mossad.
And so that's somehow emblematic on these huge geopolitical issues.
Yes, I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon. In 2002, the Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad. They did not need any identification to get through the rear entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department. Occasionally, they went to the second most powerful man, Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and they had run of the Pentagon. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said to my boss one time, "Hell, I don't run my building. Mossad does."
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev is calling it exactly as it is. The bombing of Iran didn't make the world safer, it brought us to the brink of World War III, just as the globalists planned. In a post on X, Medvedev pulled no punches. He confirmed what many feared. The US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities didn't cripple Iran's capabilities, they accelerated them. Enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. And then, the bombshell. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Make no mistake, this wasn't a miscalculation, it was a move straight from the globalist playbook. And they lit the fuse on purpose. But it gets even worse, as Medvedev explains. Iran's political regime has survived, and in all likelihood, come out even stronger. Rather than fracture under fire, Iran rallied. The people, even those once disillusioned or opposed to the hardline government, have closed ranks around the country's spiritual leadership. The global elite told us they were bombing for peace, but instead, they've galvanized resistance. And now, the tinderbox is set to explode. Iran is ready to walk away from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. All it takes now is a false flag, a manufactured spark in the Middle East, and the US will be dragged into a full-scale invasion to save face. And this will be even worse than Iraq. Iran isn't a pushover. Its terrain, vast mountains, unforgiving deserts, hardened cities, is a natural fortress. Any ground war would be a bloody, unwinnable grind. Welcome to the next forever war. Another multi-trillion-dollar black hole, millions of lives destroyed, a generation of American youth sacrificed for a lie, and every bullet, every bomb, every coffin paid for by the US taxpayer. All while the architects of the war, the global elite, sit comfortably behind their walls, counting profits and watching the world burn. Here's a fact that might surprise you. The CIA has a dedicated department for Hollywood. That's right. US intelligence actively collaborates with the entertainment industry. And for years, they've been quietly shaping public perception, planting the seeds for a potential war with Iran. You've seen it in shows like 24, Homeland, and blockbuster movies like Top Gun Maverick. Even The Fifth Estate, the DreamWorks film about Julian Assange, carries the fingerprints of this narrative engineering. Julian Assange himself has called this a dangerous farce. Hollywood, working hand in hand with the deep state, pushing globalist agendas through entertainment. Their goal? To manufacture consent, to groom the public for yet another war in the Middle East, built on layers of deception.
But it is not just an attack against us. It is an attack against Iran. It fans the flames to start a war with Iran. And it's coming out in November. It's being filmed now. Benedict Cumberbatch is playing me. This movie has British involvement, and people in Britain should be concerned about it. How does it open? Well, and this has not been previously disclosed before, the opening scene is in a military complex in Tehran. The camera comes in, closes up on a file, and it is a design for a nuclear bomb marked with nuclear symbols. There's notes and whispers all around, and they're in Farsi, they're in Persian. There's an older scientist speaking. A high-speed camera will measure the explosive charge we've designed to trigger the chain reaction. It is then revealed by the camera 4 scientists in white coats walking in a windowless corridor. The youngest, Simsana, remember that name, Simsana, writes on the file, "The dimensions of the payload are consistent with a Shabab missile." Okay, that's the opening scene. Iran is working on an atomic weapon. The opening scene of a film about WikiLeaks. How does this have anything to do with us? Well, we'll come to it. The next scene concerning Iran is in Cairo, where that Iranian nuclear scientist is meeting a US CIA agent, Kate. Close up again on a handwritten diagram of a nuclear bomb, the same diagram as we saw in the opening. And Sman says, "I copied it from memory." I copied it from memory. They're testing the explosive in the next 6 months. Now remember what Tom's National Intelligence Estimate found. Iran did not have a nuclear program. All 16 US intelligence agencies feeding into that report said that was the case with high confidence and has been reconfirmed every year since that point. The senior diplomat, who's also at the table with the CIA agent, says, "Shit, we thought they were at least 3 years away from a bomb." Another lie. Tom's report does not say that they're 3 years away from a nuclear bomb. So it's a lie upon a lie, a great big budget thing that's going to be pushed out in November. The Iranian nuclear scientist then says, if it works, they won't hesitate to sell the technology, and even if one of these things, if it works, they won't hesitate to sell the technology, and even if one of these things gets into the wrong hands, they'll sell it anyway. So that's the reality of where we're at. Not merely a war of intelligence agencies, but a war of corrupt media, corrupt culture. That war, we've got to understand, people who have appeared on this panel have been involved, sometimes with great sacrifice, at revealing the truth about important parts of the world, how the world is unfolding, how the world is shaping, the nature of institutions. They have revealed it heroically, in many cases, to the historical record, to our civilization as a whole, to you. You have to understand that where there's great powers at work, I don't mean shadow conspiracies, I mean enormous cultural powers, enormous industrial powers, the vast network of corporations that interact with government agencies around the world, selling them products, shipping their logistics from one place to another. The National Security Agency, for example, now has approximately 70% of its expenditure pass through Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, etc. This produces a lobby that pushes in particular directions. How is it that such a lie got into a script about WikiLeaks? How is it that in the light of that national intelligence estimate that anyone could think that it was tolerable, acceptable to foist that lie upon the public, that it would make it all the way through the Hollywood system, that distributors would pick it up? Because they perceive that that is where the power lies in the United States. They perceive that it's perfectly okay to slander an entire nation, that it's perfectly okay to beat the drums of war like that, because people in that system want the war. They want it.
They're pushing for it. And as courageous truth-tellers like Vladimir Putin and Julian Assange have warned, we're now closer to nuclear Armageddon than ever before. This isn't accidental. The globalist elite have long fantasized about a controlled collapse, the chaos they need to usher in their so-called New World Order. Their goal? To tear down national sovereignty and rebuild the world in their image under a single centralized global government. This is a hostile takeover of humanity, and we cannot let them pull off this heist without resistance. If you're still unsure about what's happening before our eyes, take a serious look into the writings attributed to General Albert Pike, a 19th century Freemason and Confederate general. In a letter written in 1871, Pike outlined with chilling precision the global elite's long-term plan for 3 world wars, each one engineered to reshape the global order. And here's what's most disturbing. His descriptions of World War I and World War II were stunningly accurate, down to the geopolitical alliances, the ideological clashes, and the intended outcomes. According to Pike, World War I would be orchestrated to dismantle the Russian Empire and usher in atheism and communism. He predicted the destruction of the Tsarist regime and the rise of the Marxist ideology, all to destabilize Europe and set the stage for future conflicts. That's exactly what happened in 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution. The old world was swept away, and a new ideological power rose from the ashes, just as Pike foretold. Next, World War II, he claimed, would erupt from tensions between fascist and political Zionists. The war would be used to destroy Nazism, empower communism, and create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Again, Pike was eerily accurate. The war ended with the fall of Hitler, the division of Europe between East and West, and the founding of Israel in 1948, a nation that would become central to ongoing Middle Eastern conflicts. But it's the third war, the final phase of the plan, that should make every one of us pause. Pike described it as a manufactured conflict between the Islamic world and political Zionists, a clash of civilizations so brutal, so destabilizing, that it would drag the entire planet into chaos. Economic collapse, moral exhaustion, and spiritual disillusionment would follow. And from that wreckage, the global elite would offer a solution. A new world order under one centralized world government. Sound familiar? Just look around. Rising tensions between Iran and Israel, proxy wars, cultural warfare, financial systems teetering on collapse. The very fabric of society is being stretched to its limits. It's all happening. And if Pike's first two predictions come true with such terrifying accuracy, we would be foolish to ignore the third. The blueprint is playing out exactly as described. We're not witnessing random chaos, we're watching the final act in a long orchestrated plan. And the clock is ticking. Hearing the people's voice, we're determined to continue exposing the crimes of the elite.